Hello and welcome back to Aetheral Space 13.58, All Words Part 2. We are back.
Alright, are you ready to all word it up?
What did you say? What did you say to me?
I said, alright, are you ready to all word it up?
Yeah, here's the word for you. Fuck. Fuck you.
Ah! Wait, what would happen if Dorothy Iro said fuck with all word?
If she didn't designate anything, it would be very bad.
I don't want to think about that anymore. Why did I say that?
I don't know why you said that. And the answer is obvious, I would think.
but without specifying a target.
Well,
Just become a
darkness
mess.
would fall.
Several years ago, in the ruins of a mind, a toy Muzazi tightened his grip on the hilt of luminescence as he strode through the burning metal hallway. Luminescence was his. Luminescence was extremely important to him. This he knew to be true. So long as he held Luminescence, he was a toy Muzazi, and he couldn't be anyone but a toy Muzazi, so Luminescence was always close. It was a source of comfort for him. It held sentimental value. He could never leave it behind. He swung his sword and cut down a shark-toothed pirate that had been charging at him. The bug-eyed skirrant dropped to the ground, throat cleanly cut. His own knife went unbloodied. Shark-toothed pirates. Yes, shark-toothed pirates. He had been briefed on them. He had been briefed on the threat to the supremacy. They were descended from mercenaries that the Great Chain had hired to bolster their forces during their war against the supremacy. After the Halcyon family had betrayed their comrades and the Great Chain had been broken, the mercenaries had scattered, reorganizing into small bandit crews to harass supremacy vessels. There were rumors that the remnant government of the Lesser Chain, located in the UAP, still paid the shark-toothed pirates for that purpose. He knew this. The information had been given. The time had come to eliminate them. It was an order from the Commission. Orders were orders. He had to obey this order because supremacy. It was the right thing to do. He swung his sword and chopped off a head. He swung his sword and sliced off an arm. He swung his sword and opened up a stomach. He swung and swung and swung. That was his function right now. He was barely formed, a nascent consciousness, a phoenix still choking on its own ashes. Nothing but information and bestowed intent. Everything was still in the process of pooling together. The mold called personality had yet to spread over the underlying mechanisms. For the time being, he was only one step above an automatic, perhaps not even that. So he swung and swung and swung. All a toy Muzazi was, right now, was the swing of a sword. Present day. Wounds, hail! Wounds, hail! Wounds, hail! All a toy Muzazi had, right now, was the swing of his blades. So swing he did. He pursued Dorothy Iro across the arena, wide radiant so fast that they were more like flashes of light. The onlookers finally had a toy Muzazi match taking place in the actual arena, but he doubted they could see what was going on. As Muzazi pursued and Dorothy retreated, both of them were just flashes of light, white and blue. Floating holographic screens were showing slowed-down segments of the fight to the audience, but Muzazi paid them no mind. Oh my god, they literally are like watching the fight on delay.
They have to.
They have to have a stream delay to comprehend it. He was fully devoted to the attack right now. Swing, 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 swing! More than once his attacks made contact, carving through Dorothy's skin, but just as quickly Allward would heal those injuries. It was tempting to think of this fight against an enemy who could simply undo any of your successes as hopeless. But a toy Muzazi had never been one for temptation. There were two distant hopes. The first was that the blood Muzazi had spilled still remained on the floor of the arena. He wouldn't have expected it to return to Dorothy's body before
Opposite
her wound
of, he
snapped
would have
shut.
expected it.
Oh, sorry. He would have expected it to return to Dorothy's body before her wound snapped shut, but that didn't seem the case. Did that mean she was still losing blood? If so, he could wear her down. Fatigue was no wound, and so he could keep attacking until she tired out. A battle of attrition. On the other hand, the second hope, presumably finishing her in one go. Radiant Almighty! Two mighty pillars of light erupted from the ground on either side of the fighters, like heavenly gates, and they were instantly struck by an invisible force, dissipating them. Muzazi took the opportunity and darted in, dodging the defensive knife and slashing into Dorothy's body once again. She moved, of course, and it was shallow, but it was true. Wounds, hail! Dorothy had already set the air around her to automatically attack any Radiant Almighty pillars that Muzazi created. Essentially, his most powerful ability was now sealed away. Or so it seemed. Radiant Almighty! Another two pillars appeared, this time a little bit further apart, and were destroyed once again. Dorothy swung her foot at Muzazi with the force of a sledgehammer, and he only narrowly ducked under it. He went to attack as she returned to a standing position, but a floating knife lunged at him and forced him back. Well, that was fine too. Radiant Almighty! Another two pillars, even further apart, and this time they weren't instantly destroyed. Instead, Dorothy darted out of his range once more, moving backwards towards the first of the pillars. A slam of air evicted the construct from existence, and then she dodged another Musashi strike sideways, sending her towards the remaining pillar. It met the same fate quickly enough, but still. And as a toy Musashi lunged forward again, blade shining, he thought, a range limit. It's easiest to infuse objects with a firm structure of their own. Something like air doesn't have that kind of structure, and so those who can reliably infuse and alter it are rare. It's something that has to specifically be trained for. If I had to guess, I'd say she can only reliably control the air immediately around herself. Therefore, if I keep her still and create the pillars for Almighty from a distance, I can win. That's what you're thinking, isn't it, Dorothy Iroh? As Dorothy Iroh dodged backwards, knife dancing through the air around her, she thought, you'll try to pin me down or surround me, some way to keep me from moving freely while you charge up that attack. You already know my air control has a range limit, and you're making sure to infuse the floor as we move, so I can't grab more floor tiles as ammunition. If I send the knife out to destroy the pillars, I'm taking away part of my defense, leaving myself open to more direct attacks. But still, there are moves I can make. The blood I've left scattered throughout the arena. Allward replenishes blood automatically when it heals wounds, but that doesn't mean the blood I've left behind is useless. It's already infused with my Aether, after all. There are plenty of sneak attacks I can make while your back is turned. Isn't Aether normally not internally infused, or is she just built different?
Oh, that's the default. That's how you do the crazy anime shit.
Oh, how come Skipper made the whole comment about blowing up the Supreme's insides because he couldn't reinforce his insides?
Well, they're infused less, is the thing. Usually, because you focus on attacks from outside.
Right. It's already infused with my Aether, after all. There are plenty of sneak attacks I can make while your back is turned. That's what you're thinking, isn't it, Atoy Musashi? When she uses the blood to strike at my back, I'll create the pillars for Radiant Almighty. When he creates the pillars for Radiant Almighty, I'll use the knife, but not in the way he's hoping for. And then... Their thoughts were mirrors. Oh, fuck, I can't do two voices at once.
Why not?
Which one do you want to be?
I'll be Dara.
Ready?
It'll be over.
Dorothy opened her mouth first. Blood, bind his arms and freeze! Atoy Musashi made no move to resist as the blood shot towards him from every corner of the arena, forming a band around his arms and binding him tight as it hardened into crystal. Instead, he slammed his foot down onto the ground, white sparks of Aether pouring out from his boot. Radiant Almighty! He roared. At once, all 5 pillars blazed out from the ground, each on the very edge of the arena, as far away from Dorothy Iroh and himself as possible. Dorothy's eyes flicked over to regard the closest one, to execute her own plan, but Musashi wasn't done yet. He slammed his boot down again. Radiant ablaze! A barrier of tightly packed radiance rose up from the floor around them, forming a ring of blades to keep them both confined. Without missing a beat, he raised his hands, specks of light already drifting into his grip. But Dorothy had anticipated this. She reached out, snatching the floating knife out of the air and commanded it. Knife, fly around the perimeter of the arena! That was all she needed to say. The blade took flight, taking Dorothy, who was still holding on to the hilt, with it. From there it was an automatic thing. As Dorothy was carried through the arena, the infused air around her automatically destroyed the pillars, one by one. Within the space of a few seconds, Radiant Almighty had been cancelled entirely. Letting go of the knife, she twisted her body in midair, ready to face Musashi again. And her eyes widened. The specks of light had continued to coalesce in Musashi's hands, forming his pale blade, but those lights hadn't come from the pillars. They'd come from the barrier of radiant ablaze he'd set up, the barrier that was now quickly fading away. Dorothy supposed it made sense. The pillars were no more than massive radiance. Therefore, there was nothing stopping Musashi from doing the same thing with his smaller ones. Her feet were inches from the ground, but she already knew this attack would land before she did. Musashi had timed it well. By using the pillars as a decoy again and again, he'd forced her to focus the entirety of her attention on destroying them. Well played. Still, the old her wouldn't have fallen for this, would she? No, it wasn't that. The old her wouldn't have been caught vulnerable like this, would she? No, it wasn't that. The old her wouldn't have gotten hit by this, would she? No, it wasn't that. What it was that the old her wouldn't have been in this situation in the first place. The old her wouldn't have allowed this situation to exist. The old her would have killed the Atoy Musashi long ago. Dorothy Iroh had said she wouldn't surrender, and she'd meant it. She wouldn't surrender to Atoy Musashi, and she wouldn't surrender to the 3 wise men. She had promises to keep, far too many promises to let them slip through her fingers. I'll fix my heart, and then I'll fix the world! Even if she could only fulfill half of that promise, she'd do it. She couldn't surrender to anyone except herself. That pride of hers was something she had to burn too. Teacher, forgive me. Radiant Almighty! Atoy Musashi roared. His attack was far weaker than its full potential, but in this situation it would suffice to deal a lethal blow. The blade of light rushed forwards and cut through into darkness. Popcorn.
I think you might want to keep going for this a little bit.
Alright, give me just a quick second.
No problem.
Dorothy Iroh landed on the ground. Musashi had struck true. He opened his hands, letting the smoky remnants of his blade drift out of his grip. A breath tinged with crackling white aether escaped his mouth. Had that done it? He took a cautious step forward, looking down at his opponent. The pseudo-almighty had struck Dorothy right in the chest, and Musashi could see a grievous-looking burn now lingering there. He hadn't intended to kill her with that, but it was gruesome all the same. The only thing assuring him that she was still alive was the labored rise and fall of her scorched chest. Her eyelids fluttered deliriously. Musashi approached, lighting another radiant from his palm. As soon as he was standing over her, he pointed it down directly at her face. "I wouldn't try to speak," he warned her. "With the state your body's in now, I doubt you'd be able to. Except unconsciousness. That's all I ask." She just looked up at him, her dark eyes distant. "Dorothy," he said quieter. "Please. It's over." Her lips formed soundless words.
"Yeah, it is."
Click! Atoy Musashi's eyes had been fixed on the injured woman's face, and so he hadn't seen. He hadn't seen her right hand slowly reach into the pocket of her jacket. He hadn't seen her finger crawl towards a button. He hadn't seen it press down hard. But he heard it well enough. He heard the sound of Dorothy Iroh's recorded voice. "Wounds, heal!" There was no time for shock and surprise. Even as the wound on Dorothy's chest rapidly regenerated, Musashi lunged down, radiant ready to finish this fight. She wouldn't fall for such a trick again. This was his last chance. This was his... A black feather drifted through the air next to him. "Move!" Atoy Musashi's instinct was clear, and he obeyed it without hesitation, leaping backwards several meters to put distance between himself and Dorothy. Something was wrong. Goosebumps had spread all over his body. His blood had turned cold. Freezing sweat was pouring down his face. Something was wrong. Something was wrong! All around Dorothy Iroh, feathers were appearing, dark as night. They floated around her prone form like autumn leaves, slowly swirling as she rose to her feet. As she stood, she looked down at the ground with her dark eyes. Right now, those eyes somehow seemed incredibly, desperately sad.
"It's a shame,"
she breathed, blue aether surging around her. "A shame?" Musashi's throat was dry, his voice hoarse. "No! Is she reverting to her evil techniques? No! She really said, I'm about to go back to the old me. Forgive me, Lord." Her gaze drifted back up to meet his. As she moved, more and more black feathers continued to appear around her until she was standing in the middle of a dark cyclone. A bitter smile rose to her lips.
"I was hoping it'd be clumsier," she said, "but it's just like riding a bicycle, huh?"
The darkness erupted outwards, utterly engulfing Dorothy for a moment, and when the void cleared, she was no longer the same. Massive black wings, like those of a bird, spread out from her back. At first, Musashi wondered if his opponent might secretly be a Skirrent, but no. He could tell from the pressure those wings gave off. Those were aether constructs, an ability. One of Dorothy's braids had come loose, her dark hair billowing in a sorrowful breeze. She straightened up, the ground beneath her cracking from the sheer strength she exuded. Oh, is this the calm Wendigo was talking about?
It might have been, yeah.
Yo! Aw, that's so cool. Look at her. The cracked earth around her. The kindest special officer? Insanity. This was a monster or a witch, but that wasn't all Atoy Musashi thought, looking at that figure, looking at those wings. He thought of 2 years ago. He thought of Elysian fields. He thought of the shining wings he'd spread out. The emerald burn of the man who'd sought freedom. The overwhelming presence of the man who'd humbled him, destroyed him, who'd tried to kill his supreme. The strength of one who could soar above everything. Zachariah Esmeralda. A shiver went down his spine. Why you got a dead name Skipper like that?
Musashi does it. Everyone's supremacy coded, does it?
It's fucked up. The sudden death, Dorothy Iroh declared. Massive wings stretched out behind her.
"My first ability. I haven't missed it."
Musashi said nothing in response. He dared not. He just tensed his body, ready to stance, and adjusted his radiant. He could tell now. He could tell that a single mistake against his opponent would mean death. Dorothy Iroh would now fight for real. Or so he thought. For a moment, Musashi found himself confused as he felt the Aether vanish from around Dorothy's body, as he saw the wings she just created flicker out of existence. A tiny part of him still dared to hope. Was she giving up? Was she surrendering after all? No. She wasn't dispelling her Aether. She was sending it out. An Aether ping surged outwards from around her body, bright and fast, crawling across the arena and everything in it. An Aether ping that carried the will of its user with it, that carried and transmitted the demand she had bestowed it with. The final command that all things must follow. The inviolable order at the edge of existence. The true all-word.
Die!
Does that kill everyone in the arena, too?
Maybe not.
Sorry, my tax code is an AoE. I can't help it.
Oh, the true all
He went into
word.
phase 2.
Ah, man, I wish I had part 3 right now. That's fun. I'm hyped.
You got
Sudden
to
death.
the middle of the health bar.
Based on the name, I thought what you were going to go with is the technique is like, the next hit she takes kills her, but the next hit she deals kills you. Like, literally sudden death. But I was wrong. That's terrifying.
Well, that's not even like the sudden death she's using, that's still old word she just used.
Really?
Yeah, because she took off the infusion so she didn't get hit by it.
Oh. Oh. Oh, God. Is Musashi cooked? Well, he infuses himself, right?
Yeah.
Surely he's fine, right?
Is the ground fine?
Oh, no, but an Aether ping disrupts your Aether for a second, doesn't it?
It could.
Oh. Oh, is he just gone now?
Yeah, I got sick of writing him, so I'm just gonna get rid of him, I think.
I was really tired of this hero in my narrative. I was like, another $10 million to Gretchen Hale, please. Time for a hashtag Gretchen Sweep.
He's not participating.
Nyane, like, on his knees, coughing up blood, like, how could I have underestimated her? Gretchen Hale, the strongest
Sorry,
special officer.
I built the kill Nyang gun.
Fusion tool and Nyane.
Damn it, I should have seen this coming.
My machinations. Alright, we have some questions.
My 100 years of preparation were powerless in the face of an ingenious spirit.
Rurum asks, who is the angel referring to in Fei Long's title Angel Slayer?
So it was a gene tyrant, sort of a genetic vengeance, same sort of thing as Fell Beasts or the Imminence. But it was only one of this thing. It was the Angel of Applause, and it woke up one day.
It was the what you cut out?
The Angel of Applause.
Tanhoney?
The Angel of fucking Applause, you freak!
Sorry, please continue. Angel of Applause.
Yeah, the Angel of Applause. And it's basically just got like thousands of hands, like clapping all the time. But it claps in like certain pitches and sequences that it like hacks the human brain and just drives you insane, basically.
That was an intimate?
No, it was a genetic vengeance, like a leftover the gene tyrants, like a big fuck you they leave to wake up like in 100 years.
Clap so hard your brain explodes.
No, you still live, you just like go rabid.
So it's like the Simurg.
Not as it's not as subtle. You just like go violent and it's like feral.
That's awful and funny.
Yeah, and it ruined a planet and then it came and killed it.
Is the angel itself also violent and feral, or does it just like is it vibing?
It's like an animal.
Does it eat? What does it eat?
Probably the corpses of people who go insane and die.
Interesting. Imp had an interesting question for you as well. Imp asks, do the Delseds deal with dysphoria at all? And if so, what's their relationship with gender expression?
Well, they both consider it essentially Jakob's body, basically, so... it's a weird one, because I'm not too equipped to write that stuff, because I don't know about that stuff. But basically, there is a level of disassociations, like, this is my body, this is Jakob's body. And they consider themselves more consciousnesses than, like, physical people.
Do they ever think about wanting their own bodies and what that would look like?
Not really.
Interesting.
They're fine with the flat shirt.
Alright, well thank you everybody for watching, and we shall see you next time.
Bye!